Here I was all excited about this new lighting setup, and now my microphone's dead, so the audio is going to sound like ass anyway. So I'm interested in making kind of analytical, almost video essay-like videos on various aspects of the furry fandom and furry media, and because of that, I was searching YouTube to see what, if any, other videos had been done on the subject, and I was looking for popular YouTubers who made content around furry stuff, and one channel I found was Beta Ada Delota, and he is a relatively new channel. He talks about a lot to do with furry stuff, and in his videos he mentions how he is really new to the fandom. He's only been a part of it for, I believe, about 2 years now, and so he's still like a new fur or whatever, and he's a year older than me, and he has a pretty substantial YouTube channel. He has a fursuit. He has so much stuff related to the furry fandom, and he just like freaking nosedived into it, it seems like. And I'm sitting here like, I've been in this fandom for 10 years and have accomplished nothing. So I kind of wanted to talk about that. So if you just did that math, you're like, wait, you got into the fandom when you were 10 years old? Kind of, yes, I'm gonna get into that. So you might be wondering, how did you get into the furry fandom, especially at such a young age? Well, when I was little, my mom bought me Calico Critters, and it kind of just spiraled from there. No, but in all seriousness, I've always been interested in animals. I've always loved stuffed animals. Hello, not much has changed. And I have just loved animals from a young age. I have a huge Beanie Baby collection. So even before I knew the internet or like comics and stuff, I was interested in animals. Fast forward a couple years, and my friend introduces me to Club Penguin, and about a year or so after that, my mom's friend got me my first webcam. So I was playing these online games that had anthropomorphic animal characters in them, and I really enjoyed them. And I enjoyed, especially with webkins, like all the different species and the different colors that all these animals could be, and different sizes and stuff. Well, there were only 2 sizes. There was the mini and then there was the regular size, but I just really enjoyed this kind of like fantasy world with so many different animal species, and I just really liked that. And then the big kahuna came, which was Disney's Toontown Online, which I played up until its closing in 2013, starting in about, I think, 2007. I was obsessed with Toontown. I had a billion tunes, although none of them actually made it very far. My like best tune was Cutie, and she like had just made it through the Berg by the time the game started closing down. Yes, it took me 6 years to get to the Berg. Okay, don't roast me. I was like 9. But I was super into Toontown Online, and I currently played Toontown Rewritten. I loved Toontown, and I just loved playing it. I started drawing like characters from Toontown. I also drew characters from like my Club Penguin and my webkins and stuff. But I was really getting into the character aspect of Toontown and the other online games I played. Toontown was my favorite. Well, no, actually, Fusion Fall was my favorite. Hot take. That was the best freaking game, and I can't believe it's gone forever. I also really enjoyed Pirates of the Caribbean Online and Wizard 101, which I still kind of play today. I don't know, it's the only one that's really around. But since I was so into Toontown, in addition to playing the game, I was also involved on the Toontown Central Forum, which I don't believe was affiliated with Disney. I think it was a fan-run thing. Oh my god, the moderators of that frickin' forum hated me so much. And I think some of it was fair, but I think also some of it was just like they were sick of me and they just didn't like me and were unfairly like banning me and stuff like that. But anyway, I was involved on Toontown Central, and I also watched YouTube unrelated to my interest in Toontown and like anthropomorphic animals. I watched like Shane Dawson and Smosh and Nika Higa when I was younger. And the combination of those two things led me to finding the art community of Toontown. Specifically 2 artists. One that was more active on the forums was Nova Green Socks. She is still active at this URL on Tumblr. I don't know if she's really active, but she's still around, mostly making like Haunted Mansion related stuff, if I recall correctly. And the other one was a YouTuber and later DeviantArt user I found called Totally Awesome, which I will link her channel down below. But these 2 artists were huge to me. Like, they had these tunes, and especially case of Totally Awesome, her art was very inspired by anime, which is also something that I started getting into when I was around 10 or 11 years old. So they just like had these kind of well, Totally Awesome these like kind of anime style drawings for toons. Nova was more like kind of classical cartoon style, but they made these like role plays and stories involving their toons, and I was just super into that and just like blatantly copied Nova. I had a story. She had stories where her toon was like friends with a bunch of cogs who were like kind of like good guys, and I just completely copied that for my own story. But I really was into the story making aspect of it. And so, as I mentioned earlier, I found Totally Awesome and later Nova on DeviantArt. And so they inspired me to make my own DeviantArt account when I was 11 years old, which too young for a DeviantArt account, but that didn't stop me from lying about my age. I was a rebel. I also lied about my age on my YouTube channel. I was just really hardcore, I guess. When I started following Totally Awesome on DeviantArt, I noticed that when she posted her stuff, the category she posted it in was the anthro category. And I was like, what is anthro? What does that mean? And that was when I really started falling down the furry rabbit hole in general, as opposed to specifically with regard to Toontown. As a result of that, I started following furry artists who didn't make content related to Toontown, but just their own original content. Luna77 is the one that springs to mind. I also started following furry webcomics like Anthronauts, and I was just getting involved in people's original anthropomorphic creations as opposed to just fan art of Toontown. About a year after I made my DeviantArt, I somehow stumbled across Fur Affinity and also made a Fur Affinity account, although I didn't really upload any art to Fur Affinity, and I didn't follow that many people, but I had the account and I was aware of its existence. So I was involved in the furry community that way, although most of my anthropomorphic characters, even after I stopped being super into Toon were still based on the toons that I had made. Although one exception to that was my persona, my very first persona was Jay, and she was a kitsune who could transform between a human and fox form, although it was an anthropomorphic fox, it wasn't a feral fox, because I couldn't and still can't draw feral animals. Although one could say I can't draw anthro animals either. So Jay was my first persona, and I drew a couple of pictures of her, but I was never super into her as a representation of myself, so I kind of ditched her and just didn't have a persona for a while. Then when I was a little bit older, I made another persona who was an Amur tiger named Momoko, which doesn't make sense that she'd be Japanese if she's from Siberia, but I digress. Momoko was my name at the Japanese immersion camp I went to when I was in middle school, so I figured that that would be a fitting name for my persona. And I really, really liked tigers at the time, and I still do. I think tigers are beautiful. Can you see my leg? Ugh, God. However, like Jay before her, Momoko didn't last very long, and again, I didn't really have a persona for a while. It was when I went to high school that I kind of got out of anthro. I wasn't as into it. I still loved my toons, and I loved Toontown, and I started watching more cartoons that had anthropomorphic animals in them, like the Disney classic shorts. But the interest in creating my own anthropomorphic characters had kind of dwindled. I was more into anime and human or monster characters as opposed to animals. Although I did have one character who was part of this this kind of fantasy story who was an anthropomorphic stoat, and I made a painting of her my junior year of high school. Is that correct? It might have even been sophomore. I made a watercolor painting of her. Her name is Andromeda. She looks like a bear in this drawing, but she is a stoat. And so during my teen years, I just wasn't into furry that much. So what got me back into it? Why am I talking about it now? Why am I thinking about making videos about it now? Well, after high school, I took a gap year before I went to college, which was a great decision. If you are thinking about doing it and it suits your needs, I would highly recommend it. I had a great time. It was really nice to decompress after high school. Anyway, part of the reason I took the gap year was that I wanted to focus on my art, on my writing, on my drawing, storytelling, video, all that stuff. And when I was doing this, I was thinking, there's a Tumblr post that was kind of in my mind that was oh, it's unprofessional to not have a persona. And it was obviously a joke. But I was thinking for a while, if I want to do this anthropomorphic art and I don't have a persona, it's just kind of weird. But the reason I got away with not having a persona for so long was that I never really drew myself. I didn't draw representations of myself very often, or ever. I don't think I've ever drawn myself in a cartoony style, or at least not since I was very young. So I didn't really need a persona, but I was thinking if I ever want to make cute little announcements or stickers or hell even merchandise one day, I should probably have a anthropomorphic character to represent me. And so I believe the spring of 2018, so this was like towards the end of my gap year, I made my current persona, Klasha. I've only made a couple drawings of Klasha, and I just kind of draw her when I don't know what other animal I want to draw. Most of the drawings of her I've done have been her doing athletic stuff or dancing, although there is one drawing of her in this kind of like retro, almost Lolita style outfit for Easter, which is very fun to draw. I don't really see her as like a separate character, I just see her as me if I were an animal. As I was making my persona, like for real this time, I was kind of thinking about how I didn't have a persona for so long, even though I was part of the furry fandom. And then I was like, was I part of the furry fandom? Can one be a furry and not be a part of the furry fandom? If you watch anthropomorphic cartoons, draw anthropomorphic characters, and play anthropomorphic video games, but you don't talk to anybody who also does those things, are you truly a furry? This is something that I feel about a lot of fandom. I mentioned I was into anime as well. I'm really into fantasy and sci-fi, specifically Star Trek nowadays. I love Star Trek. And I consider myself a part of those fandoms for all these shows and cartoons and comics, books, whatever the case may be. But I see so many posts talking about like, oh, this fandom's so toxic, or people like complaining about fandom culture and how toxic it is, or conversely being like, wow, the fandom culture is like so great. And I'm just like, I don't see any of this shit. I'm just so not involved. Like, I read fan fiction, I look at fan art, I sometimes draw fan art, although not very often, but I want to do that more. I'm just lazy. But I see all these posts about it, and I'm like, wow, I guess I'm just not involved in the community. And like, I talked about earlier, Nova Green Socks and this YouTuber, totally awesome. And I did actually have some interaction with Nova, and I was like so starstruck, like, oh my god, she's like actually looking at my drawings and responding to my posts, this is so cool. But I have not made a single friend online ever. I was briefly interacting with this one girl on YouTube when I was younger, but I'm pretty sure she was like catfishing or something. I don't know. She was like not who her profile was, and I thought she was cool because her profile picture was like this emo chick. But I have never made an online friend in any of the fandoms I've been. Furry, anime, sci-fi, fantasy, webcomics, Homestuck. I've just never been a part of a community like that. I joined Discord to try to do that, but I never used Discord. And I just wonder, like, am I truly a part of these fandoms, or am I just like an outside observer who consumes this content but somehow stays away from all the drama and bullshit that happens? Who knows? I don't know. Maybe I'm just lucky and oblivious and never see anything as it happens, but... So where do I go from here? Well, as I mentioned at the start of the video, I want to make video essays not really about furry community and culture, but about the media that the furry community makes. Or the furry fandom consumes, rather. For instance, I have a video plan that is on allegory and the use of animal allegory in storytelling, from Aesop's fables all the way up to the 21st century, which I'm super pumped to make. But I also just want to make videos about the use of animals in storytelling in different media, like animation, books, comics, etc. Yeah, I just want to make kind of analytical video essays on furry media. I'm also interested in the fandom side of things, because one thing that interests me so much about the furry fandom is that, unlike anime or Disney fans or video game fans or whatever, the furry community is so much about independent creators and just all these artists who are doing their own thing rather than these corporations who are making these products. Just not to like be like, oh, it's corporate overlords, because obviously I love animation and it takes a larger entity to create it than like an individual working on their computer. But it's really fascinating to me that there's this community that's not built on an established property, and like, granted, a lot of furries love Disney or various video games and stuff that have anthro characters, but more so based on a community of people who are interested in creating their own characters and sharing their own stories, whether it's via actual like webcomics or stories, or if it's via fursuiting and like role-playing and that kind of stuff. And it's just so fascinating to me that such a large community is not based on one central piece of media, but rather thousands and thousands of individuals who are creating their own stories. Anyway, this was kind of a rambly video. I just got off of, I just finished my first semester of sophomore year. I have, I really wanted to make more videos this semester, but I was just so busy, and I'm going to try to make several videos while I'm home here over winter break. And hopefully I'll have time during January to make videos because my school's January term is pretty relaxed. So yeah, I hope to make more content related to furry stuff, but also related to other interests I have that are media related. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!